All right, welcome to Week 8 Forum. This week is relatively light in terms of the material that I expect you to cover, but I am aspirational in my hopes that each of you will be contributing actively to this final week's activities. This week, I hope you will be able to demonstrate what you've learned over the course of the semester, both in terms of what ideology is today, but also in terms of what ideology may morph into in the future. So a number of interesting questions and speculations come to mind when I read this chapter. First, what factors have contributed to the rise of nationalist sentiments in Europe? Nationalism is often occasioned by either territorial aggression between states or by separatist movements within states. We certainly see the former in parts of the former Soviet Union, where Russia has seized Crimea and engaged in a series of provocations designed to destabilize Georgia and the Ukraine. Um, what explains Russia's sort of imperial irredentism? And I'll explain irredentism if anyone needs it in the forum. As for the tendency of nationalism to create division, I know the situation again in Spain, where in the northeastern corner, Catalonia voted in 2017 on a referendum to declare their independence. Why is nationalism becoming such a kind of recurrent force in certain parts of the world? This chapter also continues a discussion on the role that religion plays in the world and how there seems to have been a kind of religious revival that is attracting millions of people of various kinds into certain kinds of flavors of fundamentalism. Why is religion such a galvanizing and polarizing force in the contemporary world? Uh, what does the rise of American megachurches and fundamentalism in America say about the role of religion in American politics? Um, to illustrate, here in the United States, states controlled by Republicans are currently rushing to pass state laws effectively banning abortion. Alabama recently passed a particularly draconian ban, declaring that life begins at conception and criminalizing the procedure with up to 99-year prison sentences for doctors and rejecting exceptions like incest and rape. The law is a direct violation of the standard set by Roe versus Wade, which was passed handed down in 1973. And the drafters of the bill and the signer of the bill, Alabama Governor Kay Ivey, did so on what I consider to be pretty expressly religious grounds, claiming that their support for the bill was proof of Alabamians' convictions regarding the sanctity of life. Are these questions are these arguments justifying abortion bans at their core religious arguments? If so, are they not violations of the First Amendment's Establishment Clause? I'm just asking. We can talk about it. One of the most important insights from this chapter is that people who drink too deeply from the ideological fountains tend to think that there are some silver bullet solutions to whatever policy issue that they tend to want solved. One thing that we hope for every student who takes our public affairs major is that there are no silver bullets. And the reason for that is that there are no werewolves. And magic is just a metaphor for mobilizing the collective will necessary to overcome the difficulties inherent in collective action. The text also notes a prediction from the late economist Robert Heilbronner, who prophesied that ecological problems over time would morph into political problems that might see the return of fascist ideologies out of the kind of right-wing populist movements that we currently see. How is that? How is that as a prediction? Do we see these kinds of tendencies falling into place in different parts of the world? The last thing I want to mention from the chapter are the growing kind of international complications that globalization are creating and intensifying. So what exactly is globalization? It refers to the growing interconnection among national economies of the world. As our economies become more and more stitched together and interconnected, they also become more mutually interdependent. That appears to have had the tendency of reducing, interstate warfare. but it hasn't impeded the tendency toward intrastate or civil wars. But in the meantime, the growing rapidity and volume of economic transactions appears to be increasing the power of the hyper-wealthy, as well as increasing the influence of disruptive states like Russia and China, who are using money and state power to manipulate democratic processes of other countries. We're not alone in this. China, I think, clearly probably manipulated elections recently in Australia. So can anything be done to stop this slide toward global oligarchy? Hopefully I've given you enough to get started on this week's discussion. I hope we have a productive final week. And I want to take a moment to thank each of you for participating in the course. This is one of my all-time favorite courses to teach. And I hope you all enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. Have a great remainder of the summer, and I hope to see you in the fall.